Good job, guys. Woohoo!
So yeah, looking really forward to actually taking this cab ride and just, I don't know, hearing about your experience, maybe the lack of my experience as I go through here.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Jonathan should be arriving shortly.
Hey! Hey, guys.
Hey.
I see you've already met.
Yeah.
And we found out we're related.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
How so?
It turns out that my second cousin is
Yeah.
married.
Yeah, married to my uncle, who is my dad's younger brother.
Oh.
There we go. So
Yeah.
we're like cousins,
Cousins.
something
I don't know.
removed.
All right,
Yeah.
well, come on board.
And we may find
Yeah.
out before the end of this that we're related to you as well.
Yeah,
Who knows,
I think
eh?
we're all related in the end.
Exactly.
So, yep, hop on. Everybody all comfortable on here?
Yes.
Let's go. So you guys have just met. Fair enough. In fact, we all kind of don't know each other all that well, but more importantly, our viewers don't know us that well yet either. So I thought we could just take this brief moment to do some introductions. So I'll start. My background is in radio. I spent most of my life living and working in Vienna, Austria. I was a travel journalist. I had a column called Johnny's Journeys, and I went all over the world with that column. But I got here to Victoria. I ended up being a tour guide on these oversized tricycles, pedicabs, and I was struck by how similar the two jobs were. So that gave me the idea to do this video podcast. But instead of like having tourists on here, I wanted to have local members of different communities. So that's why I've got you here right now, to kind of show me around your Victoria. So that's me. Okay. Your turn, Charlayne.
My turn. All right. Well, that was fascinating to hear about your life. I'm born and raised in Victoria, and was in the restaurant industry for most of my life, and then I decided to run for city council, and I was a city councilor for the city of Victoria for 20 years, and decided to retire, and another opportunity came my way, and I am now the visitor experience and facilities coordinator of the Chinese Canadian Museum Fantan Alley exhibit. So very exciting.
Okay.
So if I were to share a little bit myself, you know, I'm Sam, born and raised also here in Victoria. I'd say I'm the next generation after Charlayne. Yeah. Or the same, or maybe the
No,
next?
you're a little younger.
Okay, a little younger. But, you know, I'd be, you know, your poster boy child, you know, college professor, now turned into professional partier, now apparently DJ, and now sitting here on a pedicab being filmed. So, you know, one thing leads to the next, and I honestly don't know where it's heading, honestly.
So what I wanted to talk to you about this is actually, I mean, for one thing, the fact that you were a DJ at this otherwise probably fairly conservative traditional Chinese culture festival. You DJ'd, and you were the first person to DJ there, right?
Oh, yeah, the first DJ as part of that festival. I grew up being part of this festival, watching the dotting the I's of the lions, not really actually understanding what it meant for a lot. When I was young, my parents moved us out of the Victoria, and we moved into the West Shore communities. And being the only Asian family, it was quite the cultural change, and I had my own experiences, but you know, eventually just felt disconnected from the Chinese community, actually. And eventually one thing led to the next. Here, eventually my desire to joined Kung Fu led me to eventually become a lion dancer. And
So I just want to make sure that doesn't just get lost in all of the talk, that you were actually a lion dancer before. So you were like performing in very traditional forms.
Yes.
And now you are like DJing very traditional. Well, it's quite avant-garde what I saw you doing. Can you kind of just explain what you were doing there? There were drums, and you were like mixing kind of like traditional people drumming, that sort of sound?
yeah, so my intention was to keep all the traditional instruments of all the Chinese instruments present throughout the entirety of the set. So regardless of what I played, there would always be elements of it. And it took a while, and the choice was anything that I used had to have been produced by someone of Asian heritage. So it made it even more difficult to kind of create this set. But it made me realize how little there is out there. So, it's the first time for me to actually explore my own cultural heritage.
And you see where I've brought you for exactly this moment. I think you were DJing literally right this spot on the street, literally right here. Like, basically go back a couple of weeks and you're standing right here on the street, right here. That was done on purpose, my friend.
I know, and I wasn't sure. So I wasn't sure how maybe some of the elders of the community would see the music, because I realized in the end what I'm actually doing is still using all this to just build community, really.
Love that.
I think what's important with your music is, and I learned this from being part of the Intercultural Association, and when we used to do an event called Folk Fest. And traditional music and traditional dance is amazing, but we were having trouble reaching a younger population. And by doing a little bit something different with what was traditional music, started to bring in younger crowds. And you see that in music today, whether it's from India, whether it's whatever country it comes from. By having almost like a fusion and mixing it is bringing a younger crowd being interested in not only music itself, but a little bit of their own traditional music. Welcome to Fantan Alley. It's probably the most popular spot in our Chinatown. A lot of people don't know that Fantan Alley is the narrowest commercial street in North America. And it's allowed to be called a street because there's addresses in here. And they have wonderful shops, and I'm a little partial to the Chinese Canadian Museum.
Right.
But lots of fabulous shops in here. And a lot of people say, well, why did we name it Fantan Alley?
Because it's a fantastic alley?
Exactly. My grade threes say it's because we sell lots of fans here as well. But the truth of the matter is because there used to be a game that was very popular called Fantan. The game isn't played today, but the game that's more popular is Mahjong. So you have to imagine in the, say, we started our Chinatown in 1858. But when you look at these buildings, they're probably around the 1880s. And you can imagine the hustle and bustle here. The gambling joints were upstairs, the opium factories or the opium establishments. But you have to understand that back then, it was not illegal to use opium and it was not illegal to sell opium. And the city of Victoria, you could get a business license and the federal government taxed it. So it was quite the place to be. And alleys made it a little bit harder for the police to come and, arrest.
It's pretty interesting. Like opium was allowed, but gambling's not. No.
Yes,
One more.
yes, and it's interesting enough, my father and grandfather ran one of the gambling establishments that were upstairs. And the reason why they wanted my grandfather to run it was because he was one of those merchants that was married, had a wife and 8 children, so he wasn't a flight risk to take the money and leave town. And so my father continued the trade as well.
My partner, you know, she was Ukrainian. We went to go and see this Ukrainian, like her heritage back in Calgary, in Alberta. And I found out, like, when they immigrated here, all at the same time, they were offered 10 acreages of land. And I'm like, wow, that's really different. And then, you know, I hear about my family, and then they were here, and I'm like, that's quite a stark contrast between the two. But, you know, I don't look at it as bad or good, because maybe that hardship built this type of community, and I can see how strong it still is, and it's still like embedded deep, and you know, you see the family still pass it on to the kids.
We've got your museum just right here. Why don't we go take a look at it?
Absolutely. So welcome to the Chinese Canadian Museum. This is the Fantan Alley exhibit. And how this museum came about was in 2014, our government issued an official apology for Chinese British Columbians of the hardship. And we've discussed hardship of your grandparents, my grandparents. And then in 2017, they decided that it was great to be able to fund museums in different cities.
I would like to know about how you specifically got involved in this museum, though.
Yeah, well, this has been a dream of mine for decades, to the point where I think everyone knew that this was a dream of mine. So whenever they were downsizing or family members wanted to get rid of things, people would call me and say, I have this, do you want it? And I would just take it, because I didn't know what things we would need and what things we didn't need, and I didn't want it to get lost. So it got to the point where I had boxes, I still have boxes stacked in my basement, all categorized. And so when it was decided that a museum was going to open, I definitely made sure the powers to be knew that I was very interested. And so I was contracted, and I am the one staff here, and I work along 40 fabulous volunteers that are passionate about Chinese history and culture.
But just to be clear, before there was a museum, you were like, I would like to have a museum here.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that has always been my dream. And then I was on city council for 20 years, and when this dream was coming to fruition, I said it's a perfect time to retire, and the next stage of my life is to do something that I've always wanted for Victoria, because I think we need it. We need to tell the story. As we were saying, you knew very little about your Chinese history and culture because it's not taught in schools.
Well, and the family's not sharing it either. Well,
yeah. And so we need to share it. You know, I've learned so much just from being here, hearing stories. And also people, you know, say, why do we have a Chinatown? Well, you have to remember that Chinatowns are really created in North America because, one, the discrimination of the day. Chinese people didn't feel welcome or safe in other parts of the city. But secondly, they created them because they could be amongst people that spoke the same language, the same dialect, that could help them find jobs. And so it became a very close-knit community. And our Chinatown is actually located here because we used to have, in Market Square, used to be a river called Johnson Street Ravine. And there used to be basically a walking bridge to go over. And that side of the ravine was downtown Victoria, and this side of the ravine was considered the forbidden city of the Chinese population. But these are head taxes, and this is my grandfather who had to pay the $500 head tax to come to Canada.
What year was that?
Well, this one, okay, so if I can do the history in a quick way, after the railway was built, the government didn't want Chinese here, and they didn't want more to come. So they brought in what we call a head tax, and it was only for Chinese people. So it was $50, and when the Chinese paid it, they then decided to double it to $100. And when the Chinese paid it and still came, next year they increased it to $500. So that was in 1903. When the people still decided to pay it and come, they said, this is no good. The money isn't a deterrent. And so they brought in the Exclusion Act 101 years ago. We have Canada Day every year. And for Chinese, 100 years ago, they actually called the Day of Humiliation. So they had 1 year to make sure their papers were updated. So my grandfather's would have had his original one when he came, probably somewhere before around 1903. And this picture, that's my grandmother, and this is my father. My mother is in the far corner because it's alphabetical, and she's a Wong, and these are Chows and Joes. But these cards that you see meant that they were born here, but the government did not consider them Canadian. So it basically says they're Chinese, born here, but not Canadian. And they basically had to carry these cards because they risked being sent back to China if they didn't have one of these cards on them, if authorities stopped them, even though they had never been to China.
That's crazy.
Yes.
No, I just wondered if this actually explains the reason why, because I believe that my grandfather was born here, but then I always wonder why he went back, but I wonder if it was because of this, possibly.
Yeah, when you see a lot of the men here, the Exclusion Act, so many of them said, I'm going to bring my wife and children over, I'm just saving some money, and they would write letters and say, as soon as I have the money, I will bring you. And then the Exclusion Act came, and they said, well, as soon as the Exclusion Act ends, I will bring you. So they waited a year, Exclusion Act was still there. They waited another year, and during this hardship, they didn't realize that it was going to be 23 years. And those 23 years, some of the men went back to China. Some, sadly, committed suicide due to loneliness and despair. Some waited 23 years and brought their wives and children, and by that time, they had never met their children, and here they are in their 20s now. And some of them married women in Canada and had children here, and then brought their first wife and children over. And so we have some families who have 2 women living in the house and 2 sets of families, depending on if they were able to still be around by the time this happened. And so it is a really difficult time for Chinese history, and a very sad time that we don't forget. And as you say, it probably affected your family as well.
I wonder if this is also the sort of thing you don't know about it because it was so traumatizing.
Well, I've asked about it, but I was always given a roundabout answer. Just never cleared. It was never clear. So
yeah, and because it was such a sad time, a lot of families don't want to talk about it. It's very difficult, and it's very sad for the people that were involved. We have lots of photos of locals from Victoria. We have the past Chinese mayor, Alan Lowe. He hasn't changed a bit. He looks like that. And these are my parents in their Chinese opera costumes. And this cute person here is me. It's always important when you do the photo montage, you make sure that there's a cute picture of you in there. So that's me and my sister right next to it.
You were adorable.
Wasn't I, eh?
You still
yeah,
are.
I can't fit the dress.
You still are.
That's right.
Okay, so here's what I was thinking. Maybe this being the very first episode of Bon Victoriage, why don't we start at the temple for some good luck? Do a little prayer at the temple.
Absolutely, that's great.
Sweet.
So we're going to head up to the temple next. Have you been up there before?
I have. It's been a long time. It's actually giving me a lot of feelings because the last time I've been up is when my grandfather used to come here and take me all the time. Over 20 years for me.
Yes. Well, we have to be fit because there are 52 stairs that we need to climb, so let's come on in.
Behind the scenes, I went up 4 times already, so I can attest to that.
In 1876, they decided to set up a temple in honor of Tam Gong, who is our deity. And deity means that he was a real live person in the 1200s. So we honor him as sort of like our patron saint. Because everybody came across the ocean, and Tam Gong was the protector of seafaring people. So they brought Tam Gong with them. And when they first arrived, they put him in a little hut down by Johnson Street. and by the bridge actually, and they had established him there. And over the years, they thought, well, we need to do something better for him. And the pioneer that brought him had actually gone to the mainland to pan for gold. So the other people of the Hakka heritage, because Tamgung was Hakka, and the people of Hakka heritage kind of gathered around and said, well, we need to protect him. And so they established a little shrine and a temple right next door, right where QV is. And in 1911, it burnt down. So then, again, Tamgung was homeless. And Ngai Shi, one of our founders of this temple, had a dream. And in his dream, Tamgung came to him and said, I'm homeless. You need to build me a temple. And so he gathered around all the other Hakka people he could find, and they pooled their money and resources and bought this property and built this building. And they put Tamgung on the top floor because it's closer to heaven. And that's why we have to go up all these steps to come up to worship him. And it's over 100 years ago, 1912.
So the stairs were actually a feature of the whole system. The stairs
Absolutely.
were on purpose.
Yes, so that he could be closer to heaven.
Yeah, and also keeps us fit.
Yeah.
I wonder about this because one of my grandparents brought me here, and you know, when they passed, I wasn't even sure if I was allowed back up here or if I should be, you know, bring my children up here, and it feels like it's just being lost.
This temple is like a church, open to the public. We're open 7 days a week from 10 to, well, we say 4, but our temple keeper, who is a volunteer, quite often leaves around 3:30. So we tell people to come before 3. We're Taoism here, where it's ancestor worship, and we worship the people that came before us.
Nora, why don't you show them what, when followers come, what happens?
A lot of people come and they worship their own ancestors, and it's a place where they can, you know, remember their ancestors and pay homage to them. So they'll buy incense and they'll light the incense all around, and then with the package it comes with some, it's like paper money and gold and silver ingots that we fold up, and then they can burn it to their ancestors, because they believe that their ancestors will need this money to spend in heaven. And quite often they'll bring food for the offerings, and on special occasions we actually have the whole pig and chicken and fruit here. We generally will have fresh fruit here anyways. But then what they do is, after they make the offerings, they will strike the bell and the drum 3 times. And it's quite loud. Ooh. So you can go like that, and then the bell. And then they open the chimney here, and they burn the paper money to their ancestors. And the reason they strike the bell and the drum is to let their ancestors know, here comes the money, and here's the food. So it's like lunchtime.
It's like a reverse inheritance.
Yes, yes. It's just to, you know, just to make an offering for them.
I like what you're saying about that people who don't necessarily belong to the faith can also come here.
Absolutely.
When I was growing up, you mentioned Taoism earlier. When I was growing up, we had a copy of the Tao Te Ching, and so that was one of my children's books. As weird as that might sound, like I remember, you know, going through the Tao Te Ching, and I find, because it's so not dogmatic as well. So all of this is really resonating with me.
And when you talk about followers, I'm not a follower. I think my grandmother was part Hakka. But for example, when my mother was ill, a friend said you should come up to the temple and ask Tam Kung to protect her and help her through recovery. And I asked what I was supposed to do, and they told me where to buy a whole cooked chicken and some barbecue pork and some fruit. And I came, and they showed me the temple caretakers showed me what I was supposed to do. I brought my mom with me. And you know, and I was asked to bring her back when she had recovered, and sure enough, she did. And so it was an opportunity for me, as you say, who's not a follower, to really experience what the temple is all about.
So I'm just curious, I guess, with each generation that passes, like even kids have even a little bit less, do you find that there's less people coming?
Yes, and we had very faithful followers, and the habit is to come on the 1st and the 15th of the lunar calendar, and because those are special days in the Chinese calendar, and worshipers would come on those days. And then when COVID hit, they quit coming because we had to close. It's the first time in 100 years that we had to close, because we've been open. I like to tell this, that we were open through 2 world wars and the Great Depression, and we never had to close. But during COVID, we had to close. So then the people quit coming, and then afterwards they got out of the habit of coming. So it's fewer and fewer now, and especially the seniors. And because of that, we had the chairlift built so that the seniors could make it up those 52 steps.
Sam, I felt like I picked up some apprehension from you, like you were saying that when you almost felt like you couldn't come to the temple, sort of thing, because you had been away for so long.
Yeah, well, same thing, because my parents moved out into the Western communities, and being the only Asian family there, kind of, lost connection with the culture. And when my grandparents passed away, no one else brought me up here, so I just didn't know that I could even come up here.
Sam, what I think is quite wonderful is when I was growing up in school, I was discriminated in school. We never learned about Chinese history or culture, and I really felt like an outsider. Today, I think Nora would agree, the amount of schools that come to Chinatown, and a lot of the classes will ask if they can come up to the temple, because the schools are teaching about Chinese history, Chinese culture, and want to be a part of the community. And so I think that's a positive thing, and it's something that would never have been envisioned when I was growing up in elementary school.
Yes, just today we had the Oakland School here. Yes. With about 50 children. So they came up in groups of 25.
We're going to get Sam so immersed in Chinese history and culture, and he's going to be. I'm going to make sure he's a volunteer at the museum before he knows.
Well, now that you tell me that you're taking lessons, I'm like, well, yes. I actually consider I should just go and sit in with the kindergartens and just learn basic Cantonese. And
I'm taking preschool Cantonese class, and so I may get him enrolled. Should we go see Tam Kung, the statue over here?
Yep.
And when you look at the statue of Tam Kung, you'll see he has quite a young face. And that's because he was not that old when he passed. And so he was not an elderly gentleman, so that's why they depict him as a younger person. So, because some people think, when you see a deity, it should be old and wizened, but he was not that old. And people, they may have the misconception that, oh, I'm of a different religion, I can't come up here, or whatever, would you welcome Christians or whatever. And people of Christians' faith, they also worship their ancestors. You go to the cemetery and you put some flowers down, it's the same thing. So you're just paying homage to the people that came before you. And that's basically our religion here.
All of that spirituality got me really hungry. Let's go get some food. Oh,
yeah.
Sound good to you guys?
Yeah, I'm starving. Thank you.
So Wailayun is definitely one of the places I go to get a lot of delicacies.
The pork bun.
Yeah, the noise you're hearing is the cleaver hard at work, cutting barbecue pork. And so you've got honey bun, you have almond cookies. This is called a egg tart, dan tart. What are your favorites, Steve, when you were growing up?
Actually, I make those egg tarts with the kids, and they know how to make it themselves now. And
wow.
Sometimes they'll just make I wake up one morning and there's 50 of them. I'm like, well, that's a lot of egg tarts, but
That's great that they know how to make them.
I'll make it through somehow. Yeah.
So what you have here is definitely a delicacy. This is char siu barbecue pork.
Yep.
This is crispy pork, and the delicacy here is xiao gai, duck. Oh, barbecue duck.
Ooh.
So very, very popular and very, very tasty. Use your fingers. Okay, and here's a napkin. We'll let these
you.
people come on in.
Yep.
Chopsticks?
That's a
that
lot.
good?
But it's a lot. It's delicious.
You want to grab that piece while I'm pulling that piece?
Okay, I'll pull out this piece right there.
This is one of the owners.
Ah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the restaurant and how long you've been here.
We've been here 1989. Is I think it's second generation. Since then, we've been serving the same food, making the same bun, barbecue and stuff. So
Now these are honey buns, and are definitely one of the top pastries that Chinese people love. So can you tell me, what are honey buns made out of? Tell me the,
actually, there's no honey ingredients at all.
what we call that.
I have no idea why. But now we are using sugar, butter, margarine, and this shredded coconut in the middle.
Yeah, so some people call them coconut buns
no
as
honey.
well. So-
I have no idea.
Cocktail buns.
Well, I did not know that.
I'm going to have this all over my mustache. I can already tell.
So I'm actually just shocked now, like calling it honey buns all these years.
Yes, and there's no
There's no
honey.
honey in it at all. Yeah, sugar, coconut, butter, margarine.
But it's true. It does taste like
It
honey.
does say honey.
But there's coconut.
There's the essence of honey in it. It's got like this very soft vanilla-esque
Vanilla,
feeling to
yes,
it.
that's
Yeah.
right.
How long have you specifically been doing this?
Myself,
Yeah.
I have this business over 10 years now. I was helping my dad before, I would say 20 years, making buns.
Okay.
Yeah.
So life work, family business.
Family business. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. After you. No, after you.
Ready
no,
for
after
some
you.
food?
I don't mind carrying it. You know.
Barbecue pork bun or honey bun or?
One thing that always trips me out about Victoria is just how much this place has changed. Like we look at these streets, but like it's almost impossible to imagine now that like this would have played that kind of role in the community, or that Fantan would have been so completely different as it is, or that you could just get opiates just like that and it would be legal.
Yes, absolutely. You know, and I was, we were talking earlier that, you know, some people say it must be sad that, we must be sad that Chinatown has changed so much. Well, for me, the fact that it's vibrant, people want their business here, they want to live down here, that's important to me. And, you know, our parents, I don't think of your parents or my parents didn't want me to take over their corner grocery store. They didn't want me to work in a Chinese restaurant. They hoped that I would get a job that would have weekends off, that had a pension, had medical and dental, all the things
Spend
they
time
didn't
with the
have.
kids. Yeah, like both my parents worked 2 jobs.
Yes.
Just so they can support us so we can get out of what they were stuck in. And I felt really sad because they could have used it to have a much better life. And so I tell my parents the same thing. I'm like, I don't need anything. I want you to spend it and enjoy your life because I'm okay.
Yeah.
And you guys worked hard enough.
So to frame it in a different way, you kind of, like, you are living the lives here in Chinatown that your parents would have actually wanted you to live. Like, we have this rich history and we have all of this stuff, but in fact, it is like, it's an attractive place to live. It's an attractive place to visit, much more so than it was when, in these historic times that we're talking about.
There was a time where I wanted to move down here with my husband, and my parents said, you know, we worked all our lives to get us out of Chinatown, and you want to move back? You know, so, but now, you know, I'm still considering the opportunities to move back to Chinatown.
I thought the
would
same
love
thing
to,
too.
I love to eat,
Yeah.
breathe, wake up every morning.
Walk,
with
stand on
Chinese
the
community.
balcony, walk out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's actually visit one other thing that you were telling me about. You said that your dad ran a shoe store.
Yes.
Right around here. That has also changed a lot.
Yeah.
So many of these places bear no resemblance,
Yes.
but the history in this case isn't so seedy. It's quite nice, this shoe shop.
Let me just tell you a little, the entry point of this story is that the shoe store used to be at the bottom of Fiskart. And a man owned it, and one day he said to my grandfather, I'm going back to China, and I would like to sell my shoe store. I've had a lot of offers, but I want to offer it to you first because you have a family and it would help you to have this business. And I would teach you before I go how to make shoes and do shoe repair. And he said, all it would cost you is $100. And my father said, I would love to, but I don't have $100. So that night at dinner, he told my grandmother the story. And my grandmother went into her bedroom, came out with a coffee can, emptied it out on the kitchen table, and counted out $100. And that's how my grandfather got into the shoe store business. And it used to be on Store Street, and now we're going to see where it moved to shortly after he bought it.
And how did your grandfather get into the idea of switching from shoes to tattoos?
Oh, well, that's another family.
So tattoos, matching shoe tattoos.
So the building used to be my grandfather's and father's shoe store. So this is the new shop that's here that has no family relation, but we could get a tattoo of shoes or boots if we wanted.
Right. All right, so I'm just trying to imagine this place as a shoe shop. I'm getting barbershop vibes.
You would come in and there would be a counter all the way down here. There was a wood stove somewhere right over there because my father, before my nap time, I would ride my tricycle down the street and through the alley to where there was a bakery, and he would give me his leftover dough. And I would come back here and my father would flatten them, put them in the wood stove, and then brown them, and then we would sprinkle sugar on it, and it'd be ready for after my nap. And then the stairwell, I remember I didn't like to go up the stairwell because my grandfather used to nap up there. And if I was too noisy, he would get upset and I would get in trouble. Oh, no. Yeah, so I kept most of my playing to downstairs and on the street with my tricycle. There was a safe, and I can't remember where the safe was. I think it's somewhere to the back there. But I do remember my father saying that there was one day where someone tried to break into the safe, and so they blew it up. The safe did not blow up, but my grandfather had sacks of rice everywhere, and the rice was just spread throughout the whole building. Yes, so those are when I come in here, I can feel the presence still. My grandfather, my father, that smell of leather, because there was always they cut their own leather and hide for the boots, and so I can still smell that. I can smell the cookies. I can sort of hear the machines going, and a little bit of my grandfather snoring at the same time. So,
those are some colorful stories.
Yeah, so it's always great to come in here and have a peek, and I keep saying I'm going to come in and get a tattoo as a memory of this spot.
We'll hold you to it.
Okay.
All right, where are we headed?
Well, actually, Charlayne, maybe you could tell us where we're headed.
Well, after you've seen the temple and you said that it felt very spiritual, I have an amazing place for you to check out, which is a little ways from Chinatown, but it's the Chinese cemetery.
Oh, I know where that is. Going to be doing some extra pedaling. Yeah. I'm fine with that. All right, guys, let's do this. We're going to be together for a little while, going all the way to Charlayne Point. So let me get to the other point. We talked a lot about the past, right? Like where Chinatown has been, what it's like now, how it's been changing. But one thing that I would really like to know is kind of where you think Chinatown is going. But like with so much diversity, with all these businesses coming in that aren't Chinese, with a shrinking population, what is the future of Chinatown?
Did you want to answer that first?
I don't know. I had mixed feelings for a long time, and I think we have to kind of accept change, because Chinatown is just a place, but it'll always be Chinatown regardless of what's here.
Yeah.
Chinatown is going to stay here, mainly because there's so many groups that are making sure it does. So even in the city's plans, it is considered, well, it's a National Historic Site with different zoning, with different characteristics. And I think with a lot of the Chinese associations are in Chinatown, and although some of them, you know, the membership's getting older, but there are some new younger generations that are joining. So I'm very optimistic. Yes, it's going to change, but not necessarily in a negative way. I think that there are some positive, and things have to change. It can't stay. It's a living thing, right? So we are going to see some changes, but I think it's important that we continue to tell about the history, and 100 years from now, we're going to be a part of the history, right?
One thing that I actually, what this brings to mind for me a little bit is actually sort of what happens to immigrant communities all over the world. So right now I have Gimli, Manitoba in mind. So that's like the largest settlement of Icelanders outside of Iceland. And they were, I met some people in my journalist days, and they were telling me that the Icelandic that is spoken there is the old world Icelandic that people don't speak in the old world anymore. Right? So like the language changes. And so you have like cultural traditions, or you have fusions of foods and things where they wouldn't be even recognizable if you went back to, well, China in this case. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Do you see like the Chinese culture that is surviving here? Is it transforming a lot from from what you would see in mainland China, for example, and how?
Yeah, well, firstly, when you talk about language, the original folks that came to Victoria were from the southern part of China, and they spoke Cantonese. Yeah. Well, today, the official language of China is Mandarin. And so in some ways, Cantonese is a dying language, at least in Victoria. But there are, you know, you can still hear it spoken, and I'm taking Cantonese lessons right now. Okay. So it's going to stick around for a while, but yeah, the language is going to change. And we're seeing emergence of more updated new cultures. So when I was growing up, I never had a bubble tea before. Bubble tea is not a part of mainland China, but very popular in Taiwan. So I had my first bubble tea last year. But now it is the rave, right? People love bubble tea. So you're seeing things that that are Chinese in culture and in cuisine that we didn't have originally, but now is coming into popularity. And I think also a lot of Chinese food in different cities came about because of what they could find as products back then. And so now with the vast variety of products that you can get, the cuisine has also become more adventurous.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, just when I think about, I mean, what you do, Sam, like you are also a sort of, you're like the living proof of cultures changing and what is normative and what can be considered special, like that is changing, what is acceptable, because it was actually a huge honor for you that you were invited to do the set that you did.
In some ways, you know, I have these heartstrings now being pulled. It's like, where do I want to go? Because, you know, as you know, I'm creating parties in some sort of way, but in its essence is creating community. And it's like, where is this direction leading? Is like, do I continue with trying to hold this culture so closely, or let it kind of evolve in its, you know, in a form and still like remember the traditions? And so I'm actually not sure where it's headed actually.
Okay, here's one for you, Charlayne. You know, we brought Sam as kind of like this remix of traditional culture, but I also would be interested in the ways that you yourself are kind of remixing the things that you were brought up with.
Well, you know, one of the things I wanted to say to Sam is I'm a good example. It's never too late. Although Sam says he didn't get to experience a lot of the culture, I had a lot of opportunity to experience, but I rebelled against the culture because of the discrimination I grew up with. And so because of that, I was ashamed of being Chinese, didn't want to learn the language, tried to do everything that actually, would go to sleep and pray that I would wake up non-Chinese because I found it, I thought it was a detriment to everything that I wanted, right? But today, you know, I embrace Chinese history and culture.
What was the turning point for you? I mean, because you were ashamed and now you're proud. Was there like, can you remember a moment where you were like, you know what?
You know, I went to university and I was taking like English Lit, and I thought I'd take one Chinese history class because I thought, you know, I'm Chinese, I could pass that easily. Well, it wasn't as easy as I thought, and I learned a lot about Chinese culture, and I had the opportunity to go to China in 1982. And I went, and I remember my grandmother saying, "I'm proud of you, you're my first grandchild to go back to China." Now, the sad thing is she passed away just before I left, and so I never got to tell her the experience. But I definitely felt her presence. I felt my parents' pride that I was going to go to China and immerse myself in Chinese history and culture. And when I came back, I changed my degree to Asian Studies. And it started to make me ask questions about how my grandparents came here, the hardship they had. And that's what it started. It was just piece by piece, wanting to understand myself. You know, the saying goes, you don't know where you're going until you know where you came from. Yeah. And I knew very little about where I came from. And so that was one of the journeys that I started.
You know, for me, regardless or not, you know, I'm on this podcast, I'm getting a lot, and I'm learning a lot more than I ever have. And, you know, it's just making me think about a lot of the questions I've had growing up. And it's like, why didn't I hear a lot of things? Why did my grandfather go back? And why did we come back afterwards? So it just giving me a lot of just things that I've been wondering about my entire life, but kind of, you know, set away to the side.
Yeah, so you realize that you might have more questions that you haven't been asking, kind of thing. Like there's things that are just mysterious for you, and you kind of normalize that these things were mysterious, and now you're asking, why are these things so mysterious?
But, you know, I also was maybe kind of just kind of respecting, because my grandfather never wanted to tell me. I've always asked, like, hey, you know, what did you do and why did you do this? And, you know, they were never clear answers, but maybe I was young and he didn't want to say these things when I was young at the time. So, now I'm curious if my parents know or not, because they don't seem to know a lot either. So it seems to be, you know, if I don't find out soon, then more will even be lost, is the feeling I'm getting, really.
Yeah, I think like the older generations, like, and not just in the Chinese communities, but just, I mean, also my elders, I think there was this very different way of processing trauma, where you would just kind of stiff upper lip. You wouldn't like admit that something had happened, and if you had suffered, that was almost like a cause of shame. Even it doesn't matter if it was your fault.
What I find is interesting is my father would often say, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to know about it. But in some of the times I would just bring out a picture and I would show him a picture and say, Dad, do you know what this picture is of? And that would get him talking. And all of a sudden the memories would come and he would start to talk. Right. So, you know, that's something that you might want to do. Yeah. Just try to do the visual of finding an old black and white that might have a family member in it. And ask an older member of the family, do you know what this picture is of? Yeah. And I did it. First time I did it, I was surprised how much he talked. Yeah. And I started to do it more and more.
As we're getting close to Charlayne Point, this wind is picking up a little bit.
Yes. When you see the headstones, they're very much eroded through the decades because of the wind and the salt. And so we're actually heading to the far end. Because this entrance is only open on special occasions, so if you keep going straight ahead. This area is considered to have good feng shui, and Chinese feng means wind, and shui means water, so the elements are whole and good and in balance. And so the Chinese felt this would be a great place to have a cemetery. And in Chinese culture, they believe that you should really return to your home for your soul to rest. So the very original Chinese that were buried here actually did not expect to stay buried here. After 7 years, they would be dug up, their bones would be cleaned, and put into boxes and kept in a bone house. And every once in a while, there would be a shipment back to China where your bones would be returned to wherever your family ancestors come from, and you would be buried there. But because of situations of what was happening in China, the sending of bones back to China stopped. And so then the ones that are here became more permanent. But the cemetery is considered full and became full in 1950. So if you notice that most of the graves look out to the water, because the Chinese also believe by watching the ships go by makes you feel like you're returning home. But the last burials were in the 1950s, which is that section there, which of course they're not looking at the water, and that's where my grandfather is buried.
And that's because there's more of the sense of home.
In Canada now.
Yeah, so at the beginning it was longing for the old country, and at the end it's kind of like this is where we live.
This is home now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at the front gate, there is a word, rest in peace. And now the words rest in peace are written on the back of it is a maple leaf. So now they're resting in peace in their new homeland, which is Canada. So my grandfather's over here, and you have to be careful because sometimes there might be areas that you might fall and sprain your ankle. But this is my mom's father, Wong Chu. Yeah, so that's him here. In Chinese culture, we show respect by bowing 3 times. So 1, 2, and 3.
If I may, I'd like to also.
Yeah, and we would burn incense, we would bring flowers, we'd bring fruit, cigarettes if the person you're visiting smokes. Even though I never met the man, often when I'm having difficult times in my life, I will come down here and ask him to give me some guidance or direction. And just looking at that sort of calms me and helps me with some of my decision making. Yeah. And as I said, he passed away before I was born. My mother was actually carrying my brother when he passed away. So in Chinese culture, my mother could not go to his funeral because you would not want to go to a funeral when you're carrying a baby because the grief could be detrimental to the unborn child. And so that was very difficult for my mom because she was very close to her father. We often thought we would move him to the Royal Oak Cemetery to be with my grandmother, but I kind of like that he's here and I have a connection to the Chinese cemetery.
Thank you for taking us there. I mean that.
Always feel very relaxed and at peace after I leave.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to do one last thing for you guys to say thank you for all of your time, for joining us and sharing your stories. So I thought we would go to one of the most most modern Chinatown places we can go, which is not a Chinese place at all. It's my favorite bakery, and it's just a little further down this way. It's called Friends and Family Bake. It's actually Filipino. So I'm gonna buy you guys and the crew, I'm gonna buy everybody some pastries.
That is awesome. And a little trivia question. Chinatown is the oldest in Canada, but the oldest Chinatown in the whole wide world is in the Philippines.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
So there we go.
Hi!
Hi, everyone.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
I love this
We've been
place.
filming in Chinatown all day, and I wanted to get some of my favorite staples of modern Chinatown for my crew for Bon Victoriage, episode 1. So yeah, I would love to just get a bunch of buns.
Okay,
A bunch of buns would be amazing.
Which one would you like?
I'm very partial to your Spanish bread. Yeah, the panda cells are always nice. The cheese. Let's just get a little bit of everything. Let's say 2 of each.
Okay.
2 of each. Yeah.
That's for you.
It's very difficult being at the museum because twice a day they do baking and the aroma comes down the alley. And our volunteers go, oh, I'm going to need something, and off they go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have
All
a
right.
good day.
Take care.
Okay, we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye. So this is the museum, hey?
Yes.
All right,
Or
well,
there.
let's go in.
The door's locked, so we can't.
Can't get into your own museum.
You're going to come back next Tuesday when we do the play.
Yes,
But we're
exactly.
open.